He didn't even blink. Max tilted my orange juice over my printed report, slow and deliberate, like he was watering a plant. The ink bled instantly, numbers melting into yellow puddles. The room went silent except for the drip of juice off the edge of the table. I felt my throat close. My body wanted to disappear. He smirked. Maybe next time, don't bring breakfast to a client meeting. Everyone laughed, except me. I stared at the ruined pages, my 3 weeks of work dissolving into sticky chaos. My hands trembled under the table. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to demand an apology. Instead, I whispered, "I'm sorry." The words tasted like ash. Max leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, looking satisfied. The client representative glanced away uncomfortably. Nobody defended me. Nobody said a word. I gathered the soaked papers, juice dripping through my fingers, and left the room. My face burned. My vision blurred. I heard their laughter echoing behind me as I walked down the hallway, trying not to cry. The laughter followed me like a ghost. I locked myself in the bathroom, gripping the sink until my knuckles turned white. My reflection stared back. Mascara smudged, face red, skirt stained orange. I looked defeated. I felt defeated. I splashed cold water on my cheeks, trying to steady my breathing. 3 weeks. I had spent 3 weeks on that report. Late nights hunched over my laptop, cold coffee going stale, takeout containers piling up. I had analyzed every number, fact-checked every claim, designed every chart. It was perfect. And he destroyed it in 3 seconds. I pressed my palms against my eyes, forcing the tears back. I couldn't let them see me cry. That's what Max wanted. Proof that I was weak, that I didn't belong. I dried my hands, fixed my makeup as best I could, and walked back to my desk. My coworkers avoided eye contact. The office felt colder than usual. I sat down, opened my laptop, and pretended to work. By lunchtime, Max had already rewritten history. I heard bits of the story as I passed the break room. Apparently, I had overreacted to a harmless joke. Someone said I couldn't take criticism. Another voice added, "She's always been a bit sensitive." I kept walking, my stomach churning. At 2 o'clock, HR called me. The woman behind the desk smiled that practiced, empty smile. "We wanted to check in," she said gently. "Max mentioned you've been a little emotional lately." Emotional. That single word made my blood freeze. This wasn't a wellness check. This was damage control. He had gotten to them first, planted the seed that I was unstable. I forced myself to stay calm. "I'm fine," I said, just surprised by what happened. She nodded, typing something. "We understand workplace dynamics can be challenging. Let us know if you need support." Support? What I needed was accountability. But that wasn't coming. Later that afternoon, I noticed Malia watching me from her cubicle. She was the newest intern, quiet and observant, barely 22. Our eyes met for a second before she quickly looked away. But then she glanced back, biting her lip. She stood up slowly and walked toward me, clutching a folder like a shield. "I saw what happened," she whispered, leaning close. "In the meeting. That wasn't okay." Her words hit me harder than I expected. Someone had witnessed it. Someone believed me. My throat tightened. "Thank you," I managed. She nodded quickly. "If you ever need someone to back you up, I'm here." Then she hurried away before anyone noticed. It was such a small gesture, but it felt enormous. For the first time that day, I didn't feel completely alone. I watched her return to her desk, head down, fingers flying across her keyboard. Malia had seen the truth, and maybe, just maybe, that would matter later. By the next morning, the office had turned its back on me. That's how exile works in corporate spaces. It's silent, invisible, efficient. People stopped inviting me to lunch. Conversations died when I approached. My emails went unanswered for hours. I became a ghost in my own workplace. I heard whispers near the coffee machine. Someone said Max was just trying to lighten the mood. Another voice defended him. "He's under a lot of pressure. She shouldn't have taken it personally." I poured my coffee slowly, pretending not to hear. But every word carved itself into my memory. At my desk, I opened a drawer and pulled out my emergency chocolate bar. My hands still shook slightly. I unwrapped it, took a bite, and stared at my computer screen. Something inside me was hardening. The hurt was crystallizing into something sharper, something colder. I wasn't going to forget this. I wasn't going to forgive it. Not yet. That night, I sat completely alone in my small apartment, staring at my laptop screen in the dark. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, uncertain. I opened my work files and started scrolling through folders until I found exactly what I was looking for. My original report. Untouched. Perfect. Complete with every single chart, every piece of analysis, every carefully chosen word I'd poured my heart and soul into over 3 brutal weeks. And then I remembered something that made my heart stop beating for a full second. 2 nights before the big meeting, I'd sent an early draft to Esme, the client, asking for her feedback on the data presentation. She'd specifically requested to see the numbers ahead of time. I'd sent it directly from my personal work email, with my name on it, with the date stamp, with everything. Max had absolutely no idea that email existed. He didn't know a complete copy was sitting in Esme's inbox outside his control. A slow, unfamiliar smile spread across my face in the darkness. It felt strange, foreign. I hadn't smiled like this in days, maybe weeks, maybe longer. I sat back in my chair, the blue glow of the screen washing over my face. He thought he'd destroyed the only evidence of my work. He thought he'd won this game. He thought I had nothing left, but he was so wrong, and I was going to prove it. The next morning, Max strutted confidently into my cubicle holding a fresh, pristine binder. My binder. The one I'd prepared. Except my name wasn't on the cover anymore. His was. In bold black letters that seemed to mock me. Prepared by Max Jonah, Senior Director. My stomach dropped straight through the floor. "Client meeting's been rescheduled for next week," he announced casually, tapping the binder against his open palm. "I'll be taking over the presentation completely. You can observe from the back if you'd like. Might learn something." Observe my own work. The work I'd bled for. He said it so casually, like it was the most normal thing in the world. Like he hadn't just stolen 3 weeks of my life and slapped his name on top like a trophy. I nodded slowly, keeping my face completely blank. "Sure. Whatever you think is best, Max," he smiled, clearly satisfied with my submission. "Great. I knew you'd be professional about this whole situation." The moment he walked away, rage flooded through my entire body, so hot and sudden I thought I might actually explode right there at my desk. But I didn't move a muscle. I didn't speak. I didn't react. I just sat there perfectly still, staring at that binder with his name on it, hands clenched into fists under my desk. He'd taken absolutely everything. My work, my credit, my dignity, my reputation, and now he was going to present it like it was his brilliant creation. Not if I could stop him. That afternoon, I overheard something that completely shattered what little trust I had left. I was walking past the break room when I heard Jenna's distinct laugh. High-pitched, fake, desperate. The exact laugh she only used around people she was trying desperately to impress. I stopped just outside the door, hidden from view. "Thanks for sending me her notes early," Max said, his voice dripping with satisfaction. Made everything so much easier. My blood turned to ice in my veins. Jenna. My supposed friend. The person I'd asked to proofread my drafts before submission. The person I'd trusted with my work, my ideas, my vulnerability. She'd given him everything. Every draft. Every revision. Every piece of my soul. My chest tightened until I couldn't breathe properly. I pressed my back flat against the wall, listening to them laugh together about how easy it had been. They were celebrating. Actually celebrating their betrayal. Celebrating how simple it was to steal from me. I walked away before they could see me standing there. My legs felt like they might collapse at any moment. My vision blurred at the edges. I made it to the bathroom, locked myself in a stall, and just stood there, shaking. For a long moment, I couldn't think, couldn't process. Then I pulled out my phone and archived every single email I'd ever sent to Jenna. Every draft. Every conversation. Every moment of trust. If she was playing for Max's team now, I needed concrete evidence of what I'd shared with her and exactly when. Trust was a luxury I absolutely couldn't afford anymore. Late that night, I was cleaning out my cluttered inbox when I found something I absolutely wasn't supposed to see. An archived email thread between Max and Esme's executive assistant, accidentally forwarded to me several months ago in a mass distribution. I'd completely forgotten about it until now. I clicked it open with shaking hands. My hands went completely numb as I read Max's exact words. "I'll be cleaning up Isla's work before the final presentation. She's still developing as an analyst, needs a lot of direct guidance and oversight." Still developing. Those 2 words echoed in my head. My jaw clenched so hard my teeth hurt. He'd been systematically undermining me for months, maybe longer, telling the client directly that I was incompetent, setting me up to fail so he could swoop in like a hero and take all the credit, positioning himself as the expert who had to fix my supposedly messy work. And I'd had absolutely no idea any of this was happening. I stared at that email for what felt like hours, reading it over and over until the words were burned permanently into my brain. This wasn't just about one ruined presentation. This wasn't about one humiliating moment with orange juice. This was a deliberate, calculated pattern of sabotage. He'd been destroying my reputation behind my back while smiling to my face. But now I had proof in writing, and proof, I was learning, was power. Real, tangible power. The next day, fate handed me something completely unexpected. After a routine morning meeting in conference room B, Max left his silver USB drive sitting on the table. I stared at it for a long moment, my heart pounding so loud I could hear it in my ears. Then I reached out and picked it up, the metal cold against my palm. My hands were sweating as I walked back to my desk, the drive hidden in my closed fist. I told myself I'd just return it to him. Be professional, do the right thing. But curiosity and anger won out. I plugged it into my computer, holding my breath as the folders slowly loaded on my screen. And then I saw it. Everything. Dozens and dozens of files. All mine. Reports I'd written over the past year, maybe longer. Every single one renamed with his initials instead of mine. My analysis, my charts, my words, my late nights. All stamped with prepared by D. Jonah, like he'd created them from scratch. I felt physically sick looking at the evidence. This wasn't just the presentation. He'd been systematically stealing my work for an entire year, maybe even longer than that. Every report, every analysis, every idea, all stolen. I copied everything onto my personal encrypted drive. Every single file, every piece of theft, documentation of a year of lies. Then I carefully ejected the USB, wiped it clean of my fingerprints with my shirt, and placed it on his desk with an innocent sticky note. Found this in conference room B, Isla. My hands didn't shake anymore. I wasn't scared. I was ready for war. That night, I almost quit. I sat on my worn couch with a resignation letter half written on my laptop screen. The cursor blinked at me endlessly, waiting for me to finish, waiting for me to give up. It would be so easy. Just 2 more paragraphs. Hit send. Walk away from all of this. Start over somewhere new, somewhere far away where Max couldn't reach me, where his voice wouldn't echo in my nightmares. But then I remembered something that stopped me cold. I remembered the look on his face when he poured that orange juice, the pure pleasure in his eyes, the satisfaction in his smirk. He'd enjoyed it, actually enjoyed destroying me. And suddenly I understood something important. He wanted me gone. That's what this had always been about from the very beginning, breaking me down piece by piece until I quit on my own, saving him the trouble and paperwork of firing me, making me disappear without him having to justify anything. I closed the laptop with a sharp click. If I quit now, he won completely. He'd take credit for my entire year of work, destroy my professional reputation, and move on to his next victim without facing any consequences. No, I wasn't giving him that satisfaction. I was staying. Not for him. Not for this toxic company. Not for anyone else. For me. For justice. For the ending I was going to write to this story myself. An ending where he didn't get to walk away clean and victorious. During the next client prep call, something shifted in the room. Esme, the client, kept glancing at me while Max presented my slides. Her eyes lingered, curious, suspicious, like she was trying to solve a puzzle. Then she interrupted him mid-sentence. "Isla," she said, her voice cutting cleanly through the room. "Did you write the section on market trends?" Max jumped in immediately before I could open my mouth to answer. "She helped with some research, but I structured the entire analysis and I'm asking Isla," Esme said firmly, her tone sharp as glass. The room went completely silent. I felt everyone's eyes turn toward me. Max's face tightened noticeably. "Yes," I said carefully, choosing my words. "I wrote that entire section." Esme nodded slowly, a small, knowing smile playing at the corners of her lips. "It shows," she said. "Your voice comes through very clearly in the writing. You have a very distinct style." Max's jaw clenched visibly. He tried to laugh it off, recover the situation. "Well, we worked very closely on." "I'm sure you did," Esme interrupted again, but her tone made it clear she didn't believe a single word. She looked directly at me one more time, something knowing and protective in her expression. Then the call ended abruptly. Max left the room without looking at me once, but I saw the sweat on his forehead, the tension in his shoulders. He could feel it too. The ground was shifting beneath him, and he was slowly losing control. Over the next few days, Max started visibly unraveling. He stayed late in his office every single night, door closed, blinds drawn shut tight. I'd see him through the glass walls, hunched over his computer like a gargoyle, jaw tight, eyes wild. Once, I caught him just staring at absolutely nothing, sweat beading on his temple despite the aggressive air conditioning. He snapped viciously at his assistant over a tiny typo in an email, barked at the IT guy for something completely minor. His usual swagger and confidence were cracking like old paint. People in the office noticed the change. "What's wrong with Max?" someone whispered in the break room one afternoon. "He's been acting weird all week." I said nothing at all, but I knew exactly why. Esme had shaken his confidence to its core. That one simple question, "Did you write this?" had planted doubt like a seed. And doubt spreads through an organization like poison through water. He knew deep down that I was the real author. He knew Esme suspected something was wrong. And he knew that if she investigated further, his entire house of cards would collapse spectacularly. I watched him deteriorate day by day with a cold, quiet satisfaction growing in my chest. This was what guilt looked like on a person. This was what happened when you built your entire success on lies and theft. The foundation was crumbling underneath him, and he could feel it collapsing under his feet, piece by piece. Then HR called me in again. Brenda looked distinctly uncomfortable as I sat down across from her. "Max has filed a formal performance concern," she said, sliding a typed document across the desk toward me. "He claims you've been uncooperative and resistant to constructive feedback." My heart pounded hard, but I kept my face completely calm and neutral. I'd been expecting this exact move. He was trying to build a paper trail against me before I could expose him first. Classic workplace manipulation. "May I respond to these allegations?" I asked politely. Brenda nodded slowly. I pulled out my laptop and opened a folder I'd been carefully building for weeks. Timeline of events. It was labeled in bold letters. I turned the screen toward her. Emails with precise timestamps. Draft version histories showing my name as the original author on every document. Metadata proving exactly when files were created and by whom. Screenshots of Max's USB drive contents showing stolen work. The forwarded email where he'd called me still developing. Evidence of his systematic theft going back an entire year. Brenda's pen froze midair. Her eyes widened as she scrolled through everything, her expression changing completely. When she finally looked up at me, her face was pale. "I'll need to keep copies of all of these," she said quietly. I nodded. Of course. As I left her office, I saw Max sitting in the lobby, waiting for his own HR meeting. Our eyes met for one brief second. His face went pale as paper. He knew exactly what I'd just done. I'd just buried him alive. The final client presentation was rescheduled for Friday morning. Max announced he'd be leading it personally in an email to the entire team. He sent out a formal agenda with his name at the very top and mine buried at the bottom as supporting analyst. I read the email twice, then carefully archived it as evidence. But that same afternoon, my phone buzzed with a private message from Esme. "Isla, please be prepared to speak at Friday's meeting. I have some specific questions that only you can answer." My heart raced reading those words. I wrote back immediately. "Of course, I'll be ready." She knew something. She'd figured it out somehow. I spent the next 2 days preparing intensely, rehearsing answers, memorizing every single detail of my own report so thoroughly that absolutely no one could doubt I'd written it. Thursday night, I barely slept at all. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, imagining every possible scenario. What if Max talked his way out of it somehow? What if Esme backed down under pressure? What if I froze completely when it mattered most? But then I remembered the orange juice dripping slowly onto my report, the cruel laughter echoing, the humiliation burning in my chest. And I knew I couldn't let that be the end of my story. Friday morning, I put on my best suit, straightened my shoulders in the mirror, and walked into that office ready for war. This was it. Everything I'd been building toward, my one chance for justice. The conference room was packed, senior management, department heads, Esme and two executives from her company, and Max, standing at the head of the table like a peacock. I sat quietly in the corner, my laptop closed, my printed report in a folder. Max began his presentation with practiced confidence. He clicked through slides, filled with my charts, spoke my words, explained my methodology. He was smooth, charismatic, believable. Then Esme raised her hand. "Before we continue," she said calmly, "I'd like to share something with everyone." She turned to her laptop and shared her screen. My report appeared. The original. My name in bold letters across the top. The timestamp clear, 2 weeks before today's meeting. Max froze mid-sentence, his smile cracked like glass. "This is the preliminary version Ila sent me," Esme continued. "I'd like to read portions of it aloud so we can appreciate the depth of this work." She began reading, slowly, deliberately. Every insightful line, every careful analysis, every brilliant connection. And after each section she said my name. Esme's voice filled the room. "This analysis, written by Isla, demonstrates exceptional market understanding." She scrolled down. "This forecasting model, designed by Ella, shows remarkable attention to detail. Page by page, she dismantled Max's theft. Each compliment was a knife. Each mention of my name was a wound." Max's face drained of color. His hands gripped the table edge. Around the room, people's expressions shifted. Confusion, then understanding, then anger. Someone whispered, "Wait, she wrote this?" Another voice, "All of it?" Esme reached the conclusion section. "And this final recommendation, crafted entirely by Isla Sullivan, is why we're moving forward with this partnership." She closed her laptop and looked directly at Max. Her voice was gentle, almost kind. "Max, I had no idea you had an analyst this talented under you. You should really give credit where it's due." The room was silent. Max opened his mouth. Nothing came out. He looked like a statue melting, like a man watching his career dissolve in real time. I stayed perfectly still, barely breathing. Victory, I learned, is quietest at its peak. By Tuesday morning, the entire office knew. Whispers traveled faster than emails. Someone said HR was conducting a full audit of Max's projects. Another person mentioned the client had requested a leadership change. I arrived at my desk to find 3 messages from senior management asking for my availability. Max walked past my cubicle once. His face was pale, eyes red-rimmed. His jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscles twitching. He didn't look at me, didn't say a word, just kept walking toward his office. 20 minutes later, he was called into HR. He didn't come back. By lunch, his nameplate was gone from his office door. People gathered in small groups, talking in hushed voices. Jenna approached me cautiously. "Ela, She started. I held up my hand. "Don't," I said quietly. She nodded, face burning with shame, and walked away. I didn't feel triumphant yet, just hollow, like watching a building collapse in slow motion. Necessary. Brutal. Final. But Max wasn't done. Before HR could finalize his termination, he made one desperate, stupid move. He sent an email to corporate leadership claiming I had plagiarized the report from an external consultant. He included fake documentation, forged signatures, fabricated timelines. It was clumsy, panicked, obvious, but it could have caused problems. Could have planted doubt. Except he made one fatal mistake. He copied Esme on the email. Within 2 hours, she responded to the entire thread. "I can personally confirm that every element of this report originated from Isla Sullivan's drafts, submitted to me 2 weeks before Max's involvement. I have time-stamped files, version histories, and email records proving authorship. Any claims to the contrary are demonstrably false." She attached the evidence, all of it. Max's lie died before it could breathe. That afternoon, HR suspended him pending investigation. He packed his office in silence, escorted out by security. I watched from my desk, feeling nothing. Not satisfaction, not pity. Just the quiet certainty that justice, however slow, had finally arrived. The following Monday, I was invited to a board meeting. "We'd like to hear directly from the person who wrote the report," the email said. I walked into that boardroom with my head high, my original report in hand. 10 executives sat around a massive table. Esme was there too, smiling warmly. I presented my work without apology. I explained my methodology, defended my conclusions, answered every technical question with confidence. My hands didn't shake. My voice didn't waver. I didn't qualify my statements with "I think" or "maybe." I spoke with the authority I'd always possessed, but never been allowed to show. When I finished, the room erupted in questions. Not criticisms, but genuine interest. They wanted to understand my process. They asked about future applications. They took notes. Afterward, the chief executive shook my hand. "This is the kind of thinking we need more of," he said. Esme caught my eye and mouthed, "Congratulations." I smiled, a real unguarded smile. For the first time in months, I felt seen. On Wednesday, Esme called my direct line. "I have news," she said. "My company has requested you as the lead consultant for all our future projects." My breath caught. "Me? Directly?" "You specifically. We're drafting a contract that names you as the primary point of contact. Max's name has been removed from all documentation." I closed my eyes, overwhelmed. This wasn't just validation. This was transformation. "Thank you," I whispered. "Don't thank me," she said. "You earned this. Your work speaks for itself." After we hung up, I sat at my desk in silence. Around me, the office continued its normal rhythm, people typing, phones ringing, coffee brewing. But everything felt different. The air felt lighter, my shoulders felt unburdened. I opened my email and began drafting project timelines for Esme's team. This time, my name was at the top, where it always should have been, where it would stay. 2 weeks later, Max returned. Not as a manager, not even as an analyst, as a compliance associate. Different floor, different title. Significantly lower pay. I heard about it through office gossip before I saw him. Someone said he'd begged to keep any position. Someone else mentioned he was lucky not to be sued. When I finally encountered him, it was in the elevator. I stepped in, pressed my floor button, and noticed him in the corner. He kept his eyes on the floor. His shoulders were hunched. His expensive suit had been replaced with something cheaper, wrinkled. He looked smaller, defeated, less human, somehow. The elevator climbed in silence. When my floor arrived, I stepped out. He didn't acknowledge me, didn't speak. I walked away without looking back. I felt no satisfaction, no bitterness, just a quiet, final closing. Some stories don't need dramatic endings. Sometimes watching someone become irrelevant is enough. The following month brought a new project. Same conference room, same table where Max had poured orange juice on my work. I arrived early, setting up my laptop with care. My presentation gleamed on the screen. Then, deliberately, I placed a tall glass of orange juice beside my laptop. Fresh squeezed, golden. Perfect. People arrived gradually, noticed the juice, and smiled knowingly. Nobody mentioned it directly, but I saw the glances, the quiet nods of understanding. When Esme joined the video call, she saw it too. "Isla," she said warmly, "shall we begin?" I raised the glass slightly, a toast to survival, to resilience, to the moment when silence finally became strength. "Yes," I said. "Let's begin." Sunlight streamed through the window, catching the orange liquid. It glowed like liquid gold, like victory distilled. In the corner, taking notes at a junior desk, sat Max. He kept his head down, pen moving across paper. He didn't matter anymore. He was background noise. Context, the story's epilogue. That afternoon, after the meeting ended successfully, I returned to my desk to find an email from Malia. The subject line read, "Thank you." Inside, she'd written, "Watching you fight back taught me something important. You can be quiet and still be powerful. You can be kind and still demand respect. Thank you for showing me what strength looks like." I read it 3 times. My throat tightened. I had spent so much energy focused on Max that I hadn't considered who else was watching, who else was learning. I replied simply, "Thank you for seeing me when no one else did. That mattered more than you know." I hit send and leaned back in my chair. Maybe that's what victory really meant. Not just defeating someone who wronged you, but inspiring someone who needed to see that resistance is possible. That silence doesn't mean acceptance. That patience can be the sharpest weapon. I thought about that glass of orange juice sitting on the conference table, empty now. But its message had been clear. Months later, I still keep a framed copy of that report on my desk. Not the stained, ruined version Max destroyed. The original, perfect and untouched. Sometimes new colleagues ask about it. Why frame a work report, they wonder. I smile and say, it reminds me of something important. They don't push further. They don't need to know about the juice or the betrayal or the long, quiet war I fought in conference rooms and email threads. They just see a woman who knows her worth. A consultant client's request by name. A professional who places her morning orange juice on the table without fear, without apology, without hesitation. Because I learned something those months taught me. Power isn't about being the loudest voice in the room. It's about being the one whose words they remember when the noise fades. It's about building something so solid, so undeniable, that no amount of juice can wash it away. And sometimes justice doesn't roar. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it tastes like citrus and closure, like the end of something cruel and the beginning of everything else.